Good evening and welcome to tonight's council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First thing I'm going to ask for is agenda changes.
Mr. Mayor, one change to the agenda this evening, under new business, the item number 7, which is consideration of a firm transport agreement with Southern Star and KMGA. And you guys should have a handout for that.
Everybody good with that, council?
Yes.
Next, I'll open up for public forum. Is there anybody here wishing to address the council that's not on the agenda? Seeing no movement from the gallery, I'll go ahead and close the public forum and go ahead and ask for the approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, after reviewing the consent agenda as submitted, if there's no questions or discussion, I would make a motion to approve it as submitted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move right into new business. And the first item is request for matching grant funds from K's. I believe they have a representative here tonight. Please come up to the podium and tell us your name and why you're here.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Claire Clifford, and I am the 4 through 12 vocal music teacher at USD 440 and also the Halstead High School Case sponsor. This year, after meeting with students, members of the community, also with Grant Williams and with other individuals in the community, we decided to, as a K Club, apply for a grant. It is called the Spark Grant, and it is done through Blue Cross Blue Shield. We did receive that grant for $5,000, and it is to try and ensure some outdoor fitness equipment. The purpose of the grant that we applied for was to help with mental and emotional well-being and health, so that's why we went down that line. We also then applied for the Halstead Health Foundation grant and received an additional $1,500 for a total of $6,500. This evening, I'm coming as I would like to ask the city to match this grant. I have brought a plan for the equipment, and we would like to purchase and have installation with it. The installation would be approximately $3,500 to $4,000, and each piece of equipment is $4,000 to $5,000. There's an option to put one piece of equipment in, and then through the years, add a few more pieces. So I have pictures of the equipment if you guys want to see those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be helpful.
The company we worked with was ExoFit first, and then they led us down the path to Play World, which has a 10% discount and usually is better received or better incorporated into a city or into parks. So we're going to go with the park first, and then after meeting with the Kansas Learning Center, they had asked if we could put it as a part of their program and do it beside the basketball slab there. So installing it there beside that area.
Did we get rid of the similar equipment that used to be in the Scout Park?
We had a set of monkey bars over there years ago that were built with wooden posts, and those were removed.
Those were on the north side of the park?
Yeah.
Yeah, the rings, yeah, those are gone.
The obstacle course that was around Scout Park, due to deterioration because all of it was wood equipment, it got pulled
I
out.
didn't know if we had any of that left.
Yeah.
The picture that you can kind of see there in the middle shows all the different exercises or all the different things that they could do. And then on each of those, I also included the size and how many people could be using it at a time. So our hope with this and our plan is to have this part of the high school workouts, that they could have this as an option to come and work out there. And then also we've talked to Kansas Learning Center about possibly setting up some workout programs and having classes offered there too.
What is the life expectancy of this stuff?
I did not ask that specific question. I can ask more of that.
Would the city be responsible for maintaining it?
In our grant, when we wrote that too, we said that that would be part of something we would do as our K Community Service Day, that then we would take on making sure that the maintenance was there and kept with that. So this is, and our hope is that we would continue to apply for grants to help with this improvement.
I would imagine that the vertical uprights are probably wood components, and at some point in time, if they need to be replaced, it looks like it's probably be something that we could do ourselves, or the
And
Ks.
the individual said that a lot of these pieces, then you can do the installation or the equipment, but they like to install it first for safety reasons.
Sure.
Do you know if it is wood or if
It
it's
is metal. I have a colored
It's
picture.
powder coated metal, kind of like our new playground
That would be
equipment.
great.
Yeah, that looks better.
And you can change the colors and put them in Halstead colors too.
What's gonna be on the ground?
So you can either choose to have
Okay.
a ground turf installed, or you can just have them set in cement. And so our thought had been to do with the cement, and so going from there. So this is all part of a project, though, that the Kansas Learning Center would do with the children's side, and then we would be doing more of that other part of it.
What part of the park?
This would be next to Kansas Learning Center, so next to where the basketball slab is.
Okay, that's their property.
Which that part is also, it has cameras and some of those things for safety components, which would help with that. And it's a little bit more visible from the main streets too.
Ethan, should the council decide to move forward on this, where would the funds come from?
We have special projects line both in the Parks and Rec department or in the Community Betterment sub-fund, both of which are in the general fund that could probably cover what's being asked for the max, or for the match, excuse me. We have other funds, in quality of life, too, that could be looked at, depending on what that actual dollar amount that's being asked for a match ends up being. But anticipate the special projects line should cover it.
So if we did this, it's not gonna, we could still do like bleachers and.
Yeah.
Brad, is there any liability concerns or anything like that if we were to fund this?
Nothing extraordinary. This type of equipment, if it's properly designed and obviously coming from a company like that, I wouldn't have a great concern, so no.
So how much are you looking for?
So at this time, we would like to just ask for it to be matched, and then we would go forward, because some of it will cost more than what that would be. So we've gotten $6,500 in grants so far, so we would like that matched, and then we will go forward as far as finding other grants to finish the cost of that, or cover the cost.
And why did you choose the Learning Center?
So we talked to Grant about doing it at the Scout Park, and he had just had some concerns about, the visibility of that and also some of the areas there too. And so then Kansas Learning Center had approached me and spoke to me about, well, if they were going to be doing more, and a lot of the schools that come in are looking for areas or things that they could do, so this would be accessible to them.
Yeah, I think that's better.
Yeah, I think it's a good location.
Because our original plan, and I think you guys had received some of that, had said that we were planning to do it in Scout Park. But then due to other information that was brought up or other people that came into the picture, we felt that this was the better approach.
Well, I think it's a really, really great idea. It'd be good for the community. If there's no questions or concerns, I would make a motion that the city would provide a matching grant of matching funds of $6,500.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second for this matching funds of $6,500. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you.
Same sign. Thank you. Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we have the Cedar Meadows Second Powers Edition project. I believe Harlan is here to address us on that this evening, so.
Ethan, were you gonna start, or do you want me to just jump right in?
Yeah, I'll a little preface, basically, as you all know, part of the larger project for that area, talked about Main Street and the slough crossing. We always knew, that, has to be permitted through the state. The size of what was anticipated to have to go there, is much larger, based on what we saw. We've met with DWR and talked some options, and I'll let Harlan go over it. You can kind of see there, again, what the models are calling for, that would actually be the biggest biggest culvert, the most square footage, bigger than even what's at Halstead Road or at Hertzler Road, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense why the biggest would be in the middle of the slough, but we'll talk options and what we can maybe do, because, yeah, it's gonna severely impact our timeline depending on how we proceed, so.
Thanks, Ethan. Mayor Travis and council members, I'm Harlan Foraker with Certified Engineering Design. We're out of Wichita. Andrew Wynn, he's also with me tonight. He's a fellow engineer that's kind of doing some of the nuts and bolts work on this thing. So we just all wanted to come and visit with you about this, because we got to a point here where, as Ethan mentioned, the size of the structure that necessary to go under Main Street was much larger. And let me just give you an idea of how that process works. Okay, we knew what the size of the structure was under Chestnut, under 10th and Chestnut. It's a double 8x3, and we had, just for preliminary estimate purposes, estimated a double 8x5 might be what we would be needing there, which is and how you measure the flow carrying capacities is size of opening, because obviously the larger the size, the more water you should be able to carry. Well, and so we move forward with preparing the petitions and the estimates based upon that. Well, once the project was designed or decided to move forward, we actually then obtained the hydraulic model from the Corps of Engineers and KDEM, the Kansas Department of Emergency Management. And it's a computer model is what it is that the Corps of Engineers creates for these types of studies. That's what they studied the Little River with when they put the levee up and that sort of thing. And they also did a study on the Halstead Slough as well. And once you get in there, and things are pretty well set, meaning the discharge, the amount of water they estimate that comes down through the slough, and then the size of the existing structures and how wide it spreads and that sort of thing. And then we plug in a size of structure that we're going to put under Main Street, and we determine what that impact of that structure is on the computed water surface, which is the 100-year water elevation. And in this case, we're allowed, according to state law, to actually if you do a fringe fill, this is what's identified. This is if you think of a floodplain here, that's what this map kind of shows. Shows you where the floodplain is. You can squeeze in on the floodplain to a point where it could, normal development on each edge could raise the water surface. But since we're putting a structure in the floodway, we're not allowed to the regulations state that we're not allowed to raise the flood elevation, the 100-year flood elevation at all. It must be a zero rise, essentially. So anyway, you have to put a structure then in the model to try and size and meet the criteria of a no rise that this model tells us about. And essentially, what the model tells us, if we've got to put in a 3-cell box that's 12 foot wide for each cell and 9 foot tall. So much larger than anything that is along the slough all the way from Halstead Road to Hertzler Road. Unfortunately, we're held to a higher standard just because this model exists and has been certified to. And I've said it would take an act of Congress to get the model changed, to get that discharge change. And so trying to go in that direction really, to me, I don't think is an option that we could pursue in a timely fashion. So so we met with Pat and Ethan and discussed what some options were there. We had a phone call with Janelle Phillips because she's with Division of Water Resources. She is the one that permits these for the state, and talked through some options and the idea of perhaps what's called a low water crossing, but that's a little bit misleading here. It's really not a low water crossing. It's a low flow crossing. Would handle most of the flow for a lower flow storm, but potentially if that 100-year flood event did come along, the water could pop up over this structure and continue on downstream without causing a rise to what they've studied the natural conditions are, okay? And so that sort of a situation or that sort of a structure is a possibility in our discussion with Janelle. And certainly, your opening size of your pipes to handle the hydraulics can be smaller in that situation, because again, we don't want water going up and over the road every time it rains. That's not our goal here. What we want to do is to be able to handle maybe the more frequent storms, but then should we get that high flow event, it will go over the top, and so for a period of time, it might be impassable and should be probably marked as such. And we talked to Pat, maybe the city would have to put some sort of a warning sign or a warning barricade or something there. So those are the two options. And so what I wanted to go over with you is this one profile drawing that I handed out here just before the meeting. Go ahead. Do you have a question?
Okay, we've got 3 horizontal lines there. The bottom one is a dashed line.
Right.
Go ahead.
Okay.
We've got 3 horizontals there.
On the
Towards
bottom.
the bottom.
Okay. Yes. Here.
Yes.
What does that one right there indicate?
Okay. This right here is the flood, the 100-year flood elevation is what this dashed line is.
Okay, the next one up?
That's meaning no, that's natural conditions.
Right.
If we come in which are permitted by state law to fill in this fringe area on each side, it causes a rise in that 100-year flood.
Okay.
And that's that's the design criteria that they allow you to squeeze on this enough that you cause no more than a 1-foot rise. Again. But that's for fill in this fringe over here. But if you're building in the floodway, which is defined as this width right here, then you're required to, you must prove a 0 rise before they will permit your project.
Right. What is the top dashed line?
This one?
No, go ahead, right. You got this.
This one right here.
Yes.
It's not really labeled. I don't see it labeled right here. It's called an encroachment. This one?
No, where you were.
Oh, here's
Where
where
you
he's
were,
at.
Harlan.
Right here.
That one right there.
Yeah, that's called the encroachment, and I'm not sure what that is.
Is that the 500-year?
It could be the 500-year flood elevation, because they mark the 500 and then the 100 on this same
Okay,
diagram.
that's what that marking is at the top. Okay, got it.
So yeah, because see that does, that's, Ethan, you're right on. That did mark the 500, how wide it spreads and how high it rises for that 500-year discharge. We don't design for the 500-year storm.
Right.
What we typically design for is the 100-year flood event, okay? So, anyway, that's just kind of the nuts and bolts of how a floodway, when I talk about a floodway versus floodplain and fringe areas and that sort of thing. But on that profile that I sent out to you handed out, we've shaded, Andrew has shaded an area there that kind of shows the proposed profile of the road. And the top line there is what the profile of Main Street would be if we were going to put in a box necessary to cause the no rise. Okay, and just for point of reference, that's about a 1391 elevation right over the top of the box. You can look at the grid there, okay? Now, if we, and interestingly enough, if you were interested to know what the elevation of 10th and Chestnut was, it's about a 1387.5, okay? So with that in mind, compare that to the 1391. That box on Main Street, the top of the road profile on Main Street is going to be 3.5 foot higher if we go that route, okay? I guess let me pause for just a second. Of course, the thing that most concerned was the cost estimate. Once we got to figuring out that this was going to be the size of the box, a 3-cell 12 by 9, that cost bumped up to probably about $500,000 just for the box. And whereas we'd preliminary estimated around 250,000, something like that, okay? So what we did then, after talking with Ethan, we looked at an option where we might create a low flow crossing. And we're still tied to that same criteria. We can't cause a rise, but essentially during the 100-year flow, the water bumps up and goes over the road. And in this instance, we would propose the road to be concrete and the side slopes to be concrete to prevent any erosion and take that flow. You could see the red line then on your profile is where we could lower the profile of the road down and then put in the ovals you see there are the 48-inch. There's 7 of them, 48-inch around culverts to carry roughly the two-year design storm, okay? And so you can see we can lower the profile of the road nearly down by some almost 4 to 5 feet. And then that profile of the road will actually be approximately a foot below the 10th and Chestnut
Right.
road profile. And so I'm just thinking from an optics perspective, you know, you driving on 10th and Chestnut, seeing a road that's 3.5 foot higher on Main Street, the perspective's gonna be, oh my gosh, that's gonna back water up on properties, you know, on upstream.
Well, it makes sense because you're further downstream also if
Right.
you're dropping it.
Right. So, and then the blue line in there is what is the 100-year flood elevation, 1388.35. So I know this may be more numbers than you want to deal with, but I just wanted to give you a perspective of, by putting in this low flow crossing, we can probably cut the project cost in half, and the profile there will be down more conducive with or comparative with what the 10th and Chestnut road profile would look like. And obviously then our cost would be significantly less as well. More within the project budget and the estimate that we had originally prepared. So that's what I wanted to come visit with you about tonight. I do think, yes, the requirements of this box having to be almost twice the size of any other box upstream or downstream
Crazy.
is not really, not very pragmatic here, I guess, in this, not very practical in this situation. So,
Regarding these flues, what about debris coming downstream on the intake side of this? Is there gonna be a grade?
well, I'll just tell you, the upstream box is a double 8x3, so it's 3 foot tall. These boxes, these pipes are going to be, you know, 4 foot diameter. So I guess if there was gonna be debris, I'll bet most of it would be stopped on the upstream side of the Chestnut Street box. I can't say there won't be
Sure.
potentially limbs that might build up and develop, but I guess the only other option, you know, is if we were to build a span bridge and have it all clear span, but then we're probably talking a cost even that would exceed the $500,000 that we would have. So yes, it probably would require some maybe more frequent maintenance than a box that's that clear span. But I guess I just wanted to inform you of some of the information that we've obtained, and I guess have you be aware that now there's nothing that says, I guess the other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, now, if the city was relying on this crossing to be the only emergency access, you know, down to the Cedar Meadows area, obviously, and so wanted to be able to go through this crossing absolutely, you know, 1 foot above the 100-year flood, so it would never flood in the 100-year event, you know, then we're probably tied to having it up at that 1391 elevation. I mean, if you want emergency vehicles to have access at all times. I know we have, you know, Chestnut that can get the emergency vehicles can pass through. We also have the 14th Street tie-in that could come in. So, you know, there are other ways in. So that's a decision I wanted to make you all aware of and ask, I guess, for your involvement and direction in the decision process.
One question I have, and I'm gonna direct this to you, Pat. Historically, have we seen any flooding there at Chestnut?
I believe after talking with I had to talk to the department head, I think Ethan did. There was one in 2017?
2017, when we
that's right.
flooded, like when City Hall, you know, the alley flooded. I mean, we had whatever, that inland hurricane that dropped 3 inches in like an hour and a half. Or
Yeah, and
something.
that storm just sit right here over the top of us.
Yeah, that Chestnut went underwater. Actually, I think Brody gave an interview there to KWCH or something, but,
How deep did it go?
You couldn't drive through it. There was no way to drive through that. It was pretty far up Chestnut on either side of the crossing there.
But once it quit raining, it didn't last very long, right? Cleared out pretty quick.
That I don't remember. I don't remember how quick it is cleared up by the next morning.
According to their elevations, the flood elevation being at 1388.35, and the intersection at about at a 1387. So that's between a foot and 15 inches of water over the top of the road, according to the study that the Corps has done on that. Again, we're not changing that. That's what they currently are saying could be the water over the top of the road there, so.
Well, I definitely think we need to look at all the options we can to, save some money on this project. Obviously gonna be an expensive project to begin with.
But I guess the one thing I would tell you is those, the opening area on the boxes currently under 10th and Chestnut, two 8x3s, that's 48 square foot of opening total. Each of them are 24. We're putting, these pipes we'll be putting in, what do we figure? 87 square foot of opening. So we're almost doubling the area of opening for the water to be conveyed under Main Street as to what it is under 10th and Chestnut by putting in these 7 rows, lines of pipe. So if that gives you any perspective, that we're obviously increasing the size by nearly 1.5, if not more times.
How long would it take you to do it,
Do
this work?
that, well, that would be part of the road project, and that's probably a 45 to 60-day project, I would say. The nice thing about pipes is that the use of boxes, they would have to be special made.
Yeah.
Because they don't build those regularly.
Where do
But
you
the 48-inch pipes are available in the yard at like Wichita Concrete Pipe.
Okay.
And so they're readily available, the end sections are readily available. So,
If, once we get a decision made on which direction we want to go, how soon would you be able to get moving on it and? Get
well,
this going on this
we
project?
can get right away on the design. Now, just an update, the water and sewer plans are at KDHE. They have been there since April, okay? And I think Ethan had me check on the status of those, and we got an email back from the review person and said, we're in the queue. There's eight projects in front of you, so no one's been assigned to your project yet. But if that tells you, that doesn't sound too promising to me, but anyway, that's where we're at with that. The only thing we might need, the one thing we would need here is we've got to get the Division of Water Resources permit and a Corps of Engineers permit, because we're building in this,
Floodway.
yes, floodway actually in this situation. So that's gonna take some time. So I don't know, Ethan, do you want me to bring up the other option perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we have the options for you, because the projects have been pre-authorized, and we used, the estimates we had at the time, knowing that the Main Street crossing. So, I mean, the options is we can just, we always said, depending on the price point of crossing Main and the slough there. I mean, we looked, if we tried to go, say, farther downstream and would replat and like have Stutzman go through instead of Main, the slough only gets wider, which is only gonna make our problem worse. As far as what that model's gonna say we need for discharge. So we can choose to just walk away and leave Chestnut and 14th as the access points and not do Main. We can pursue the low flow, or we can, do the more expensive solution look at those costs. We would have to get with our bond counsel and update, some of the authorization documents we did to reflect that we're actually probably gonna need to borrow more money than we originally anticipated. But to what Harlan said, that would give you Main Street at such an elevation that in theory would never become waterlogged. Again, as far as anecdotally, the 2017's the one event I've heard of since the levee was built where Chestnut went under. That doesn't mean there haven't been others, but everyone said, no, it doesn't go under ever since the levee got put in 93. But as Harlan said, either way, we're gonna have, quite a bit of permitting to get done still, which is not a fast process. And we can look at, because part of the area, and this is the other map that you were given, is getting at least the plans or kind of bifurcating our project and considering the Main Street extension as kind of a standalone project and actually just focusing on the benefit districts and getting those streets built. That way homes can be turned around. And I'll let Harlan talk a little bit about that option, because it would basically, you know, we can still extend Main when those approvals and stuff went through, but we're not necessarily impeding construction that doesn't have all this for the sake of the crossing the slough.
And what Ethan is referring to is we talked about an option, okay, what would a way we could perhaps expedite the street construction, short of getting the Main Street crossing done so that the residential development could proceed in fairly quick fashion. And I don't know, did you pass out one of these sketches? Do they have
Yeah.
that sort of a sketch that shows, you know, we could go ahead and just revise the plans to pull back on the Main Street extension at this time and build it as shown there in gray, in that portion of Main and this portion of Stutzman Circle and the 14th Street extension, just to a point of the north end that we could serve most of these lots, even in the Powers addition. But we would just we'd build this curb and gutter street just as we'd planned all along, even for future extension. We'd just put a temporary cul-de-sac in off each edge with just a strip of asphalt or something for a turnaround, so that emergency vehicles or errant vehicles, lost people that might happen to wander in the area could turn around without having to pull into somebody's yard or drive. So, I mean, that was one thing, and I'd gotten a call from Weber's, who are the developers, and they said, well, you know, is there a plan B or something that we could maybe do to help get the residential development going? So I don't know. That's just an option that I throw out there to you, and again, that's.
Well, I can't
for you to
see
give
that does a
direction to.
lot more work for you. It doesn't put a whole lot more work on your table to get these guys moving
Right.
and have us have the permit process working in the meantime for that bridge and such.
Right.
Yeah, I like this plan too.
This partial one.
Get them moving.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So, that's something we could, because again, the water and sewer is set up to serve all the lots. So it's not gonna change, but it's just gonna be, we'd pull back on the Main Street extension and that box improvement, which, you know, it could be 3, it could be 6 months before we'd get Corps of Engineers and Division of Water Resources approval on that crossing there.
Yeah.
So,
These guys' meters is running.
right.
I'd like to see them moving.
Right. So, we would tailor this to where, you know, we would try, I can't say absolutely, but, we'd probably check with Division of Water Resources, and depending on how far north we went with the ends of these roads, as long as we don't encroach into the floodplain, then it's outside their jurisdiction.
Sure.
And we don't need their permit. And that's kind of the nice thing of
And
that.
you're gonna know what the elevation of those roads needs to be.
Yes, yeah, we'll have that profile designed. Matter of fact, yeah. We've already got it designed, as I showed you in that one drawing showing the red line profile there, if you went with either way there. So. But I guess I just wanted to make, you know, one final comment on that is, you know, I can't portray to you that if we put in the low flow crossing, that water will never go over the road. It absolutely could.
Sure.
I think overall, the residents of this community are gonna understand that if we see a major downpour, we're gonna have flooding in other areas of town anyway. And to spend that much more money on just one section of Main Street to make sure that it never floods is probably not money well spent. Because if we get to a level of water to that degree, we're gonna have plenty of other problems in town anyway.
If you have water going over the road, Main Street with this low flow structure, you're gonna have water over Chestnut Street as well. There's no preventing it, because that water, that's where the water comes from. It's gotta go over 10th and Chestnut to get to this structure. So both of those are gonna be,
There'd only be one access then, right?
if they were both underwater, you'd come in through 14th.
East Street, yeah.
Right. So,
So by delaying this drainage, would the cost go up?
It could slightly, if we had to bring another paving contractor back in town. The size of the project, always you get, better, rates of return and that sort of thing, or unit prices, I guess I should say. Right. So, but as far as the pipes go, I think the pipe installation, and there's always the case too, is if we get these permits and such in a timely fashion, we can then sit down and negotiate with the contractor we have. If we get those in a timely enough fashion, we can then negotiate with that contractor to expand and finish this work then. While he's here, mobilized in town, doing that work. So we're kind of, it does gives us some flexibility to be able to negotiate with the current contractor we'd have.
Well, I can tell you personally, in the world we're operating in today, I haven't seen anything flow in a timely fashion, so that would be getting your hopes up.
Do we know what the elevation of the bridge over the slough on Hertzler is?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can find out for you. I think, yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can sure get that for you. So anyway, I didn't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but I guess I just wanted to involve you in the decision-making process so that you know which direction we would head, because in visiting with Ethan, he thought, you guys should be involved to understand how we intend to proceed here, so.
Do you need any formal action from the council, Ethan?
I think a consensus of how we
Yeah,
want
I
it
would
to go.
say probably a motion of authorizing the plan to be split and at least, pursuing plans for just the benefit district, would be appropriate. We should, why we talk about the benefit district is, Harlan, if you recall those estimates when we did that, those estimates weren't affected because the city at large was taking care of the Main Street crossing, so all those numbers and authorizing documents should still hold. And we can get that, continue with that process, not hold up like the special assessment process or anything like that. And so really what we're taking out or splitting off would be just kind of that Main Street extension that was solely at our cost anyway.
And one of the things I guess I would say is, once we do have bids, then we can evaluate the funds that we have, temporary notes that we have obtained, and if any adjustment needs to be made up. Obviously, if you've got plenty of money in the temporary notes to cover the project costs, you just proceed, that's fine. But if bids come in higher, I guess, than what's anticipated, then you kind of have to step back and maybe reevaluate. And I don't know if that requires a new resolution or something for the city to authorize higher funds. But then you have hard bids, though, to work from, and you know what those numbers are, and you can adjust from there, so.
It would just be nice to have all this engineering work and permitting done now, going out for this bond money, because we all know interest rates are gonna keep going up.
Yep.
With that, Mr. Mayor, if there's no more discussion or questions, I will make a motion to proceed for CED Engineering to proceed with the benefit district portion of this project and continue to work with the permitting process on the bridge and
Second.
Main Street Bridge, yes.
I'll second.
Just for clarification, George, so does that mean you want us to pursue the low flow
Yes,
option?
Yes.
Okay.
yes, yes.
We have a clear motion then? I'd entertain a clear second.
Second.
There we go.
So this is connecting Main to the new Main, right?
Right
Yes.
now, the motion on the floor is we're gonna continue with the work for the benefit district, but we're gonna delay the Main Street extension until we get all the permitting in place.
Okay.
So that is the motion, to continue the work for the benefit district and wait until the rest of the permitting and engineering data come in for the Main Street extension. So all in favor of that action, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
That carries. We're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda. Are we done with Cedar Meadows now, Ethan?
Yeah. That's enough to keep us rolling on that.
The next item on the agenda is the Ninth and Walnut project. And I'll let Ethan bring us up to par there.
Thank you. Harlan provided updated estimates. As we all know, materials continue to get increased. This, basically what we're looking at would be the Ninth and Walnut intersection and then one block each direction off that intersection. So the 800 and 900 blocks of Walnut and then the 9th Street between McNair and Walnut and Pine. We can pursue that. Since Harlan was gonna be here, we're also looking at doing a water line, addressing some water lines in the area. When we do that, just so you all make sure that we wanna go ahead and engage CED to give us those final plans, and the construction and engineering contract for that work. The anticipated cost will, pretty much tap our, as we weren't successful with any of our grant applications, will effectively be the rest of our capital street monies for this year, with the street ceiling that was already authorized previous in the year. So just wanted to make sure everyone was still on board with that. And just knowing, it might affect, because obviously we have to build that capital street money up, we might not be running into any capital street work in 2023 as we kind of rebuild that capital budget.
To be clear on this, the project we're talking about, it's not gonna be a mill and overlay, it's gonna be a full rebuild.
Yeah, this is full reconstruction on
So
all
that's why our
all
funds
four
are,
blocks in the intersection, yeah.
yeah.
And we can cover it with cash on hand, we won't have to put it out, but as far as to bond, but it's, the last time we did that, and then, when we met in our work session, they're like, well, okay, what are we doing in the next year? And it's like, well, you're at zero, so you kind of have to
Right.
allow that to get back up, so, which, the budgets per your guys' request will build in capital street money, we won't be able to hit the ground running quite as fast in 2023, so.
Well, we've certainly delayed this Ninth and Walnut work for long enough, and we've got some residents that have been waiting for it to happen, so it would be my
Glad to be able to do it.
Yeah.
to get started on it.
Circumstances have kept coming us up and just held us off, so.
Okay. We'll get with Harlan and get a contract for that work.
I think I did update the estimate, didn't I, for you?
Yeah.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but as far as for the overall project.
Yep. Okay.
No formal action on that, then, Ethan?
No, consensus is fine.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, just one quick.
Sure, Harlan.
In answer to your question, he looked up the road elevation at Hertzler is 1388.5, and at 10th and Chestnut's 1387.5. And if you remember, I said the 100-year flood elevation is 1388.35 at Main Street crossing. So it's pretty much just flat with or level with the top of Hertzler Road there.
Wow.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
803 is 1388.5. And then 10th and Chestnut's 1387, I think I said .5.
Interesting. So that wraps up the Ninth and Walnut project discussion. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda is recycling in Halstead, and Ethan will give us a prelude to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, the city was contacted by Nisley, and they are interested in extending or offering recycling services to residential customers. Their process would be basically to directly contact and contract with those homeowners that would want recycling. Originally, if you'll recall, when we were discussing keeping citywide curbside, Nisley indicated that unless the city wanted to mandate it for the entire city, they had no interest, as they didn't think they'd have enough customers to justify. I believe maybe their circumstances have changed as they're doing, some contract residential pickup in Newton now. So maybe they're looking to to save on those routes or would combine us with maybe days they pick up Newton. I have no idea what the cost to an individual residence would be for that pickup, but under our current ordinances, we have a established contract for trash and recycling. If the city wishes to offer that, we got away with recycling, so City Attorney Jantz can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we'd have to modify our ordinance to allow a private hauler to essentially contract with residences free and clear of the city. The other consideration is, normally when, in cities where multiple private haulers, even though this is the same as our main trash private hauler, come in, there's consideration of franchise fees and things being charged for wear and tear on streets, as far as their customer, counts, or charging some sort of permitting, whether we want to pursue that since Nisley has our trash residential, just wanted to bring that up for a discussion point, I guess. There is some fear about the confusion that might cause with half of the bill being directly to Nisley and half of the bill being covered on the city utility bill. But we've worked well with Nisley. I think it's a headache that can be overcome, or not necessarily reason to delay. I know ever since we ended curbside recycling, there have been several residents, that have expressed, wishing we still had the service or some way to offer it. Was also approached by an organization that maybe wants to consider doing a community pickup. Just told them that, that would have to be a pretty well thought out plan and ask before they would come and to see if the city would support that, just based on our previous discussions. But Nisley basically wants to know if we will allow them to privately contract with residents for recycle pickup.
My personal opinion, I personally would like to have that. I wouldn't mind dealing with Nisley personally. I've had several citizens contact me afterward, and they feel the same. So if the city doesn't have to get involved with it and Nisley is able to do it and we can work it out, I think it'd be a great thing that we can do for those who want to partake of it.
So does that open the door for other private?
Yes.
Yeah.
For the recycling aspect anyway.
Recycling?
Yeah, for recycling,
Recycling, not for. yeah.
not for trash.
And we're not abandoning the majority that we've already, this is just separate.
It's completely separate, right?
So it won't affect the majority that doesn't want recycling.
Yeah, if you don't want to,
In any way.
yeah, your trash bill will still be, $15 on your utility bill. If somebody contacts Nisley will drop off their can and they'll get a new $12 a month or whatever Nisley sets that price point.
They'll get a bill from Nisley.
Nisley,
Right,
yeah.
probably the only involvement that the majority of the citizens might get might be a phone call or a letter in the mail asking if they want this service. And if they don't want it, they can throw it in the non-recyclable trash. But yeah, I think it would be great. I would like to partake of that.
I don't see a problem with it.
I think that's fine.
I'm completely against the community recycling thing, because it usually ends up to be just a trash hole.
Well, that was one thing. People thought of, maybe we have an area where everybody can take their recycling.
Have you
Well,
seen those areas?
That's the
Yeah.
thing. We get all of us who want to recycle properly, and you get the knucklehead who brings contaminated
Yeah.
garbage in there and ruins the entire load.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even work out well.
Do you know how many customers that they have to have for Nisley for them to do the program?
They did not have a floor when they called and asked. They just said that thought that, their estimates would probably be about 10% of people in the community would opt to recycle.
So the customers that they have right now called them directly and then contacted you? Or how did that work with having this back on the agenda?
Nisley contacted me and said, we want to do this if the city will allow it. Because my first response when they called was, you told us unless the entire city recycled, you weren't going to recycle in Halstead. And then they were like, well, now their factors have changed. We can offer it to residents, but we would just bill it directly, not, have City Hall worried about which house has trash and recycling, which house just has trash. So Nisley will And again, that's the only downside I can see is it might be confusing to people since Nisley's the hauler for both of, calling us on a recycling issue, but there's other times where we have to send them directly to Nisley with like large item pickup. So I don't think it's gonna be that onerous of a customer service challenge.
I don't think it'd be that.
Did they say where they're gonna take the recycles afterwards?
They, I believe, take them somewhere in Douglas County.
Okay.
As their final drop off, but at first they take them to their facility in Hutch.
So you'll modify a resolution and bring it back next meeting that will allow them to do this?
Yeah, we can get that ordinance language in place to allow it, and then, the other question is just whether you want us to put in any sort of licensing fee or franchise fee, because it, like I said, it does technically open up if Waste Connections suddenly is like, hey, we'll offer single individual account recycling too, where they could come in.
Well, yeah, and the thing of it is, there was another fellow that came in, an independent, he shows up with a pickup truck and a big trailer, and we don't want all of that start running through town, you have 4 or 5 different people doing recycling, we don't need that.
So.
But we don't really have a way to stop that, though, if we're permitting Nisley to do it.
Well, if we have a vendor providing a service in town, who's currently providing a service in town, I don't see how we can put ourselves at risk by denying somebody else if we continue to let that vendor come to town and privately contract with the residents in town. I don't see an issue there, do you?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
Yeah, once you open that door, if another Waste Connections wanted to come in and make contact individually with citizens that have the same right, we would have some difficulty in turning them down at that point, since we've already allowed one private who's completely private in nature doing that. It's unrelated to our franchise with them at that point.
Okay.
So Newton's doing the same thing. I got several of those letters, why they sent 2, I don't know. But indicating that it's all on you if you want to work with them. And Newton has its own service. And so, but they're still allowing the private service to come in for that reason, and that means anybody can do it.
Is Newton, putting franchise fee requirements on?
I didn't see whether they did or not. I mean, it wasn't something included in the, the notice to the citizens. Just indicated that you would
Well, and I'm.
contact them with your interest.
There's gotta be a point with anybody that's running a business where it's gotta be profitable or they're not gonna be interested in being here.
Right.
And, Nisley can come in and garner 10% of our population that wants to recycle, that has their trash service with Nisley now, and I think everybody's been happy with Nisley's service. They're probably not gonna look outside of Nisley for recycling.
Well, and I mean, honestly, with the market, the recycling market where it is, I mean, I find it very unlikely that Waste Connections is gonna come up and solely sell
anybody
recycle
else,
accounts.
yes.
Right.
Or anyone else, but I mean, I guess is making sure our code language, I mean, if you're gonna have the possibility of multiple companies and larger trucks running on streets of either wanting to offset that additional wear and tear and or making sure like we do with contractors, that they're carrying sufficient liability insurance in case of they hit, gas meters, that kind of thing, which I think, it doesn't have to be a franchise fee where the customer ends up paying more, but you want to make sure that there's probably some sort of licensing with the city for them to operate.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, we'll look forward to you bringing a solution to the council, Ethan.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
With that, we'll move on to 2022 street sweeping. I would imagine Ethan's got a schedule in mind when he'd like to bring them in.
Yeah, we have the proposal there from Clean Right. It's basically they set a top number, which is 16,000 for this year. We have them come in sometime between July 4th and Old Settlers. Been very happy with Clean Right the last 2 years we've used them. So we would ask for approval of that proposal from them. It is about an 8% increase over last year, but they do update their, the very first year they did it with us, they quoted, 13, and then figured out that they had undershot based on the amount of debris they picked up. So last year it was just under 15. This year, I mean, it's mostly fuel and stuff driving that increase, but
I think that's probably to be expected.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no question or discussion, I would make a motion to approve the quote from Clean Right for street sweeping for an amount not to exceed $16,000.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to approve the $16,000 project for street sweeping this year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That carries. We'll have clean sweet streets by Old Settlers. Next item on the agenda, Ethan wants to bring us in on our off time and set a council work session, so. What do you have in mind there, Ethan?
either the week of June 20th or June 27th would be the preference. Obviously, with revenue neutral rate, we have our preliminary numbers from the county for budget, so we can start to talk about that, what that means in terms of our budget, because we'll have to get that hearing set by our first meeting in July if we're gonna have a revenue neutral hearing this year. The other is we are done, or at least in the presentation stage of the MKC wastewater treatment plan evaluation study, and we need to have a discussion on that with you all and talk options there. So either one of those weeks, as long as we avoid Mondays or Fridays, with the MKC guys, they thought it should work for them to be able to come and attend that work session, so.
I'm good either of those, council.
I'm good with either also.
Yeah, me too.
I can only do the week of the 20th.
I like the 20th better,
20th.
but I'll do whatever.
20th good for you? Or do,
20th is a Monday, but I can do that week anytime, just not the following
Be
week.
the 21st, 22nd, or 23rd.
And I'm good any of those days.
Are you good that 20th?
I can't do the 23rd. That's my wife's birthday.
No, the 20th I'm out. I can't do the 20th. I can do the-
21st,
I can do
Tuesday,
the 21st, yeah.
Denise?
21st is fine.
Yes.
21st, guys?
Sure.
Yep.
Somebody make a motion.
What time?
I would probably recommend the 6 o'clock timeframe.
All right, there's no further discussion. I'd like to make a motion to set a work session date for Tuesday, June 21st, to convene at 6 PM.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to schedule a work session for Tuesday, June 21st at 6 PM. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And Julie, would you please send us reminders?
I will.
That'll move us up to number 7, which is consideration of firm transport. If you all recall, this is an agreement with Southern Star, and I thought we already approved this, but I'll let Ethan bring us up to par here.
Yes, Mayor's memory is correct. We did approve this last year, got us through this winter. So basically, this gets us winter 2022/2023. Again, just for transparency, it essentially sets a firm, you see the daily volume there. That would be firm transport numbers on the Southern Star pipeline that Halstead would have. The reason that becomes important is if there's ever an event where operational flow orders are issued. If we don't have firm transport, then essentially Southern Star could, in theory, cease allowing gas to flow, or there would be significant tariffs to the city for taking gas off the pipeline. This at least gives us a daily volume. The downside is when we do this, if for some reason it's a warmer than anticipated weather event, winter, that's where we get into having to sell back over purchased gas at a loss. But this does offer us better protection. Again, in the February event of 2021, we did not have firm transport. We're very, very lucky that didn't cause us bigger issues than the unfortunate pricing did, but this is recommended. And KMGA actually has the contract with Southern Star, so this document allows KMGA to enter into an agreement with Southern Star on our behalf.
Do you remember what our daily volume was back when we were under the high prices and most of our manufacturing was shut down?
I don't off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look.
Be curious to know what that number is compared to what's on this firm transport.
Yeah, this would include industry running, so.
Yeah, so if industry was shut down, it might buy us a little extra.
Breathing room.
Yeah.
And then as far as action on it, we would just need a motion to approve the agreement and authorize the mayor's signature.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve the agreement with Southern Star Central Gas Pipeline and also for the mayor to sign the contract.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to approve the firm transport agreement with Southern Star. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That carries unanimously. That finishes up our agenda under new business. We do have 2 executive sessions this evening, and I would entertain the motion for that first one as soon as Ethan's done writing it up.
Could I do an impromptu address to the council?
Public forum sections already came and gone, Kevin.
It was a spur of the moment happening.
I suppose if the rest of the council tells me they're willing to let you, we could, council. It's up to you.
Well, we're about to walk into an executive session right now. How long do you need?
About 5 seconds.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
So we were out riding around on a golf cart, and we found this, and I figured the city can probably figure out whose it belongs to. Somebody lost it off the golf cart.
Oh.
It's not mine, I checked. And so that was the impromptu thing, and I said, well, shoot, they're having a city meeting. I'll just go in and ask them impromptu question. What have you done about revisiting, revising, reviewing the golf cart ordinance?
Nothing tonight.
I've thought about bringing it back up, Kevin. We've just been dealing with a lot of other things with these street projects, trying to get squared away first. I haven't forgot.
Okay, well, and the last parting comment then is hopefully it'll get done before Old Settlers hits again this year.
Good thought.
But I figure she can probably figure out who that belongs to about as fast as anybody.
All right.
Good evening.
Thanks, Kevin.
See ya.
Okay, now we're ready for that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Halstead City Council recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss pending litigation pursuant to the consultation with an attorney on matters that would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, exception KSA 754319B2, and ask that in addition to the governing body, the following persons join the governing body in executive session: the city manager and city attorney. The open meeting and governing body to reconvene in the city council chamber at 8:25 p.m.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to enter into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We will be moving to executive session. We are back from our executive session. Is there any action to be taken as a result of? Seeing no movement from the council, we'll move on and I'll ask for the motion for our second executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Halstead City Council recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss performance of a city employee and maintain privacy rights pursuant to the personnel matters of non-elected personnel exception KSA 754319B1, and ask that in addition to the governing body, the following persons join the governing body in executive session: the city manager and city attorney. The open meeting and governing body to reconvene in the city council chamber at 8:45 PM.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to enter back into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are in executive session. Okay, we are back from our executive session. Is there any action to be taken as a result of?
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve a carryover of 40 hours vacation time for our city manager.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve 40 hours of vacation accrued carryover for our city manager, Ethan Reimer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And just so the public knows, sometimes we have to do this because we make Ethan work all the time. Next, we'll move on to the report section of the agenda. We'll start with governing body comments tonight. Tonight, I'm going to start with you, Derek.
It's getting hotter out. Just check on your neighbor if you know, if they're elderly. Make sure there's enough water and food. So that's all I can suggest.
Josh?
I don't have anything.
George?
Nothing, sir.
Denise?
I was just gonna mention that it's getting hotter. Make sure that, you stay hydrated if you're gonna stay outside. And if you're gonna be outside, wear light-colored, cool clothing, and make sure to apply plenty of sunscreen, because I don't need any of our citizens to be job security for me.
Brody?
I have nothing.
Well, it is evident that Julie could not find a proclamation for me to deliver this evening. So we'll move right on to the city manager report.
Thank you. I just realized as I looked at the packet, and that's completely on me. I will email that out after the meeting. My written report was not in there, but that's because I forgot to send it to Julie to put in the packet. So I'll get that out there with the details for you all, and I apologize for that oversight. Just the highlights that we didn't talk about tonight. As far as other agenda business, budget's in full swing, so look forward to having those conversations with you all. And then the others, just putting out there again that the city does still have open positions in public works and administration. So anyone that is looking for a good job at a great place, please fill out an application and we'll get an interview scheduled for you. But the rest will be covered in that report I email, and I apologize for that.
Anybody have any questions of Ethan? Well, before I ask for a motion for adjournment, I would like to thank Kevin Henderson for coming by for a short visit tonight. So, he turned over a lost, slow-moving sign off of somebody's golf cart. Hopefully it's been connected with its rightful owner. So, other than that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, council.